Hey y'all, it's Chuck. On this episode of my podcast, I'm going to talk to my buddy Jason Harrington. He's a local funeral home director at a Reed and Benoit right here in Watertown, and he's on the Watertown District School Board. Now this guy's got a passion for helping people. That's what brought him into the funeral industry, and he brings that passion over to the school district too. So on this episode, we're going to talk about what it takes to get into the funeral industry and what's going on in the funeral industry, and a little bit about the local school board. So y'all pay attention, check us out, be good, peace out. Cool. You ever do anything like this? Never?
No, I mean, certainly listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
But when you brought the idea months ago,
Yeah.
because when we met, I told my girl, and I was like, you know what, I'm never gonna hear from that guy again.
Yeah.
And then you text me like almost immediately, or I text you, and we stayed in pretty regular contact, and that was really cool to me because you weren't from the area, you have no reason to care who I am whatsoever. So
Yeah.
the compliment goes to you.
Well, like I said, dude, there is a weird thing that I don't know if it's a weird thing, but I don't know how to explain it. Like I feel I'm not weird hippie, but I feel like energies and connections and vibes, that kind of thing,
It's like one of the nicest compliments I've ever got.
You know what I mean?
Man.
Like,
That's
I don't
awesome.
know what it means, but when I met you, the first time I saw you, my oldest daughter graduated, and you gave a speech.
Yeah.
I didn't, I'm like, oh, hurry up. It was good though. It was good, but it was hot in that in that room in there. I'm like, all right, let's get it. And she's got a W for a last name, so I'm like, come on, this is gonna be forever. But it was awesome. It was awesome. But that was the first time I saw you. And then obviously my wife's dad passed away, and then I saw you there, and then I put two and two together. And then you told me some wild stuff, and I was like, that is interesting. And that was like, you were the very first local person I had thought. And I'm like, I got to get this guy on this podcast thing I'm doing, because that was some wild stuff. But
I remember we talked the majority of those calling hours.
Yeah, yeah.
I think at one point your girl was like, all right, come on.
Yeah,
Quit. But that was, what do they call that? A bromance, right?
Yeah,
That's what they call
right.
that.
Yeah, dude. It was, you were like, hey, people put some weird stuff in these things in here. I was like, oh man, that's wild. Dude. But so let's start right here. How did you get involved in the funeral business?
So I have a weird story, but it's also really regular. So I graduated SUNY Potsdam, no plans.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was a fireman. My mom's a nurse. I came home, wasn't going to go for higher education. I honestly, at that point in my life, had a biology degree, and I was like, well, I'll probably just be a police officer or something, because
Excellent.
I've got some corrections in my family and things like that. I was working as a lifeguard at North Pool. I'd been a lifeguard with the city for like 5 or 6 years. And I came home one night, turned on HBO, and there was the show 6 Feet Under.
Yeah.
And I just watched it. And it's obviously about funeral directors and their day-to-day lives. And I watched one episode. And the next day I applied to SUNY Canton. And I got accepted in their program. And 2 months later, with no on-the-job training, I'd been to one funeral of my grandfather in 1998. I'm going to SUNY Canton to be a funeral director, right? That's my plan. Horrible plan. And I'll tell you why, and then I'll rewind. It turns out, go ahead.
Let me tell you one thing. So speaking on how we were talking about vibes and stuff,
Sure.
My dad was a police officer and my mother was a nurse. And I was like, I'm going to be a police officer when I grew up. That was kind of like, I didn't care about going, higher education or anything either. Yeah. But by the time I hit 18, that's when I had my daughter that just graduated. I'm about to be 38 on Tuesday. So you got to imagine how old I was. So it went straight to work. But go ahead. I was just wanting to throw that out there before we got too far into it.
No, that's what I was going to say is that had I done my research, I probably wouldn't have gone because preliminarily, the show, just like lots of shows, are nothing like the profession.
Yeah.
Like if you watch 6 Feet Under, they have funerals, but the funeral directors being portrayed are like never on call.
Yeah.
You know, they're
And
like,
we're waiting on your phone to ring right now.
that's right. That's right. I mean, they're at the beach. They're on vacations. It's very different. So anyway, let's rewind. I go to SUNY Canton, and my mom and dad go to calling hours at Reed and Benoit, where I currently work. And the owner, Bill Studley, who is probably the biggest influence in my adult life. I couldn't have asked for a better role model, but my mom says, hey, guess what? Jason just enrolled in mortuary school. And he was like, are you serious? Like, is that a joke? And she's like, no, like he's there right now. Isn't that funny? He's like, well, it's not funny. What is his phone number?
Yeah.
You know, and the next day my phone rings, unknown number, and I answer, and it's my boss, Bill Studley. And he's like, so you're really in mortuary school? And I was like, yep. And I knew him from growing up. He lived down the street from my grandmother years, but I hadn't seen him in a long time. And he was like, well, here's the deal. If you come home this weekend and every weekend thereafter while you're in school, when you get out, you'll have a full-time job. You don't have to have an interview or anything. And that's what I did. I went home that weekend. I met him and the other people that worked there at the time. Now, none of those, the same cast is there other than Bill. But it's crazy how life turns out because it's, especially in a small community like this.
Yeah, so a TV show like really inspired that, right? And one funeral.
It did, and I mean, if you think back to what you said and what I initially said about being a police officer, being a funeral director, with the exception that we don't carry guns, there's a lot of similarities there. I think that you are dealing with people at their most vulnerable, at a very dark time in their life, and they're honestly just looking for help.
Yeah.
And I think whatever I did, going back to my original thought process, I knew that I wanted to help people, but more importantly, I knew I wanted to help people in the city I grew up in.
And I wanted to speak on that because you were really like it was a wild, really wild. I mean, it wasn't what happened with us was sudden, right? And you were a big help. You know what I mean, for my wife's family and everything, because she'd text you and you respond right away. I mean, that was awesome. I think you did a good job with that. I don't, as far as like, I want you to know that. You know what I mean?
It's awesome to hear. You know that you have a good family that you've married into.
Yeah.
And they're great people. So it came very naturally.
Yeah. But being able to help people, I mean, that's. See, when I started this whole thing, the first thing that I wrote, all right, I'm going to do a podcast. And I wrote services. Like, I wrote podcast services. And, I've kind of got a voice up here. People recognize me like we're talking. And I'm like, how can I feel like I'm kind of behind, right? I come from a small town, so I wanted to kind of catch up, right? So everybody, I grew up with the same people. Everybody knows everybody. And I got here, and I don't know if it's an envious thing, but everybody knows everybody, and they kind of know me, but I want to know them. So I started this whole thing, and I'm like, well, how can I make this thing, into something? So I feel like I've taken people and set them in that chair and kind of elevate them and listen to their story, and I feel like it's going to help elevate different people and help me understand the community. Like, this whole thing is a history thing, like with the funeral home. It's a pretty cool thing for me too.
It's not always a bad thing to come from and live in a town that you didn't grow up in. I think a lot of times it helps, but I think that bad blood and things like that can be an undercurrent.
Yeah.
Not that it happens often, but when you have somebody come in like you, and I told probably 5 people tonight I had a board meeting. I was like,
Yeah.
I've got to go on a podcast after this with Carolina Chuck. They're like, dude, I hear that guy all the time on the radio. So it's remarkable in the short amount of time that you've been here, the name that you've made for yourself. And the one thing that you did well is you picked a family to work for that is bar none and that are very much like you.
Yeah.
I saw Charlie Caprera. He came into calling hours, and I don't think that I've ever talked to him before. I mean, I know him. I think a lot of them. He walked through the door. He was like, "Hey, Jason, how you doing tonight? Where's Bill?" He has a very unique way, and all the Capreras do, of talking to people like they're their own family. And today I heard that there was a ad on, I believe, on TV that Billy was talking about. That's just what they do.
Yeah, I mean, I have worked, before I came up here, I've worked with a millionaire, right? We were doing stairs and stuff, and I don't know how to explain it, but he was not the same as these guys. These guys literally, they care. You know what I mean? They really do. He comes in, Charlie will come in the dealership, he'll shake hands with people. And I keep saying he shakes hands with people, but he literally comes in. He wants to say hello. He wants to remember people from every time they've come in. The people have come in they've been doing this 50 years. Yep. And the guy I work for, Frankie, he's the same way. I mean, he wakes up every day at 5 o'clock, like me. We go to the gym, and he's innovative. This family is going to be around for a little while. Like, he is about continuing that on. But the relationships they have with the community and stuff, it's pretty neat. And the fact that I can sell for them is, I feel good about it, because I feel like what the product I put out, it's going to be a good product, and I don't have to worry about it. Like, when I was doing the stair thing, something was messed up with it, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't care. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to explain that, but they're definitely a good family. And actually, these cousins with Charlie's first cousins with my wife's dad that passed away.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So that's how I got hooked up with those guys. So I'm really, cousin by marriage down the line a little bit, but that's how I got hooked up with those guys. We came up here, on a summer vacation, and I talked to Billy, which was my wife's cousin, and he said, "Man, I'll put you on the sales floor." And I just left that company to kind of start my own company.
Sure.
And I said, "Heck, she's never lived close to her dad or anything of that side of the family." So we said, "Shoot, we'll come up here and check it out for a little bit." But I've sold cars before, so it was kind of neat. But
so you're saying that you were going to start your own company. What did that look like? What were you going to do?
Well, see, I did custom staircases, right? So, dude, I did Joey Logano stairs. I did the owner of the Washington Nationals stairs. Did the guy that made Guitar Hero. And I don't mean I did them, right? I was involved in the project.
Sure.
But when I came on, I'll give you a little history real quick.
Yeah.
I sold cars real young, when I was like 21, 22. And it was 08 and 09. So recession happened. I wasn't really good at it back then. I was just there, having fun, wearing suits, young guy in Charlotte, but the recession happened, and I just could not get anybody to buy anything. I mean, I was filling out credit no approvals, no approval. No, the bank wasn't lending it out. It was weird. So I ended up getting into construction for a little bit, doing overhead rolling doors, and ended up getting laid off with a lot of people. And I got into MMA and boxing and stuff. I did all that. Sure. Then I got into the stairs. Now, when I got in the stairs, I had to start at the very bottom. I was strong. I had to help them carry it, because they build these things in a shop, and then we install them in a house. You know,
Really?
we build them in a shop, put them on a truck, and take them to a house. And then the house is in framing usually. Once the roof and everything's on, we'll bring them in, level them up, and everything. I'll show you some pictures in a few. But I helped the physical part of it. Then they taught me how to cut parts, build them, install them, and then eventually I was like, all right, that's, I just got addicted to it. And if you see my license plate down there, it says Car Chuck on it, right? So the guy that was teaching me stairs, he said, dude, when you commit yourself to something like stairs, you got to go all in on it. He said the guy that taught me had Stairman on his license plate. So after I got up here and I committed myself, I thought about that, and I was like, all right, I'm putting that on my license plate, right? But anyway, so I got into, I quit and went into handrail and learned way more about stairs. And came back as a manager, got back into sales, and then I quit that company, went to another big company, and by the time, I did 12 years in stairs, or almost 12. And then I was like, you know what? I've started from the bottom all the way to the top. I know everything. It's time for me I've got the crews, I know the people. I'm really good at making connections, Yeah. So I said, man, I'm going to start my own thing and just, so I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I haven't had to use a tape measure in a little while. But this is cool, man. I really dig the car thing, and then it's developed a new passion for the media and marketing side of what I like to do. And I did stairs almost because I had to, but I fully committed to the project, and it really and it turns out I really just wanted to get back into sales. I could have went back to a car lot, but I was already invested and saw a good outcome with the stairs, and then I still could. I mean, I'm still doing connecting some pieces down there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which is crazy, and I'll tell you why. When I grew up, very active, kid who didn't sit still, right? Kid who just talked all the time. In fact, my grandmother was my lunchroom monitor at Knickerbocker School.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my K through 3, now it's K through 4, but K through 3 back then. And she would come in, and every day I had gotten in trouble pretty much, and I would have to sit out for recess. But that was what type of kid I was. And then, like most of us do when we get to high school, that all curbs itself, and I didn't get in trouble anymore. But it's funny to think, and this year at opening day, because I talked to the faculty on opening day, I outlined about this kid who just could not stay out of trouble and got referrals and was just overly active and always in trouble for talking. And I said, and then he grew up to be the president of the same organization.
Oh, wow.
And I said, so just remember, and the reason really would be that I had a teacher of mine, a music teacher, take an interest in me. And that's sort of what I'd been seeking, somebody who really believed in me. Russ Fonts is his name. Gave me a lot of tough love, taught me a lot of life lessons. A lot of the success that I've had was from my time around Russ. But I told the faculty that. I said, when you have that kid, you can be the person who in 25 years, they're praising you in front of all your peers. And it's real simple. Mm-hmm. You just have to do what you signed up to do. And we're fortunate in Watertown to have phenomenal educators. I've always felt that this is school district of choice, not just that you have to go here.
Dude, my brother is a...
Yeah.
My brother is a teacher, right?
Okay.
And he was doing stairs with me. So he did stairs for quite a while, and he went to Belmont Abbey and became a teacher. He teaches 6th grade, I believe, chemistry or something, science right now.
Okay.
Which it's kind of a crazy thing. You're going out of he was a shipping manager, so he's managing all these wild dudes to take stairs all around the North and South Carolina.
Sure.
And now he's got little kids. I'm like, you know what I mean? He's having to deal with dudes, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, how do you hold your tongue? You know what I mean? It's funny, but he always wanted to do it. So I think that's awesome. And another thing you were saying, like, dude, I was the ADHD kid big time, bro. Like, big time.
Yep.
Like, I was big time. You know what I mean?
So when parent teacher conferences rolled around, mine was always last in the day. Mm-hmm. And 5th or 6th grade, my mom came home crying. And I was like, what's going on? You know, as much as a 6th grader could comprehend this.
Yeah.
And she was like, I didn't just meet with the teacher you have normally. I met with every teacher that interacts with you. Mm. And she was like, and they think something's like off or wrong. Yeah. They're like, because you just can't be quiet. Right. You can't sit still. And I mean, you could analyze that, and you know, maybe next time you can get a couch and I'll lay down and we'll do the therapy thing,
right,
and we'll get to the bottom of it. But eventually, it all ceased, and it worked out oddly enough in the weirdest of ways. And I never even considered running for the Board of Education.
So how did that happen? Right, like where did start at step one? Like, how did that happen?
I had a great friend who was also a teacher, Brian Shepard, came through for calling hours. And he said that there was an election coming up, and this would have been 6 or 7 years ago. I think that's 5 or 6 years ago. He said there weren't enough people running. Being an alumni, would I run? And at that point, I said yes. And then I ended up, for whatever reason, not seeing it through. So a year went by, and I thought about it, and I called him back up, and I said, I'd like to run this time. And he said, well, what changed? And I said, I had some personal things going on in my life at that point that had been resolved. And then I decided to run. And that's another thing, just like the funeral industry. You think that it's one thing, but it's extremely different, and it's gotten very different. In fact, if you type in school board to Google, it's all going to be negative. Every result that comes up from the news, you've got parents we went through it here about 2 years ago. It seems like we couldn't stay off the media, and what we did is we kind of adapted. I think the school boards have always listened to parent concerns, but I think that we had to do a better job at listening and giving the community a voice. And I think that we adapted, and we did that. And knock on wood, right now things are okay, and I think things are calming down a little bit, but for whatever reason, school boards have always had a reputation that things are hush-hush and done behind closed doors. And whether that's true or whether that's not, I'm not going to debate that.
Right.
But I do know now that we have 2 chances for people to come and speak at our meetings. Very open line of communication with emails. Our new superintendent is in constant communication with anybody who calls them. And I think that's just the way of the world now. That's what's expected. Information flows much more freely, and you have to be transparent.
Yeah, and not to get weird and off topic, but I think that social media itself is like an evolving thing, right? And not speaking like I believe in evolution or anything, but humans got to where they are right now because of their ability to communicate. I feel like when they decided to hunt and all that, like it, and pass on knowledge, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like, so like Facebook and all that kind of stuff is almost a part of an evolution, because you got a picture that whatever we say right now, our great, like it's going to be documented where people can actually, like way on down the line, can see what we're doing on a daily basis and stuff. But And so being able to adapt in the school board, I mean, that's part of it. But, you're handling everything's out up front and in the open right now. Because that's why I friend all the people I sell cars to on Facebook that, because I'm confident in the company I work for. And it puts it out there. Like, like how you say the superintendent will answer a call. I'm like, hey, I'm right here, just like that. If there's any problems or, it makes it easier to sell them again, but
Yeah.
But dude, what changed? I mean, how did you decide like, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm the man for the job?
For the school board?
Yeah.
It was almost, given my history, like almost a joke. So I run the first time. I didn't even know. I'd never been to a school board meeting. I don't mind saying that now because I've been on for 5 or 6 years. I didn't even know what they did. I just knew that I wanted, again,
To
get involved,
Yep.
get back to the community that gave to me. So the first time I ran, I got a 1-year contract, or I got a 1-year seat, somebody who'd stepped away, because I got second place in that election. 2 people ran, I got second. Go figure. And then I did that, and then it came time to re-up and get a full-term seat that was available. So I ran, and that was the year that COVID hit. So we had mail-in ballots, and that was the biggest election, I believe. Well, I don't want to be misquoted. It was a big election.
Yeah, yeah.
And I won that one.
Nice.
And so then I got 3 more years. And then 3 more years was up, and I was like, this feels good. Let's do 1 more. So that was last year. And now I'm going into my 2nd year of 3. And I've had moments where I'm like, man, why? Why did I?
Yeah.
Because you know what life is like with kids.
Oh, yeah.
I have 2 myself with my job. I've always said that the funeral industry is sort of like having a baby that never grows. Because when somebody calls, it's just like a baby crying in the night. You have to take care of it.
Right, right.
It's not anything that can be put off. But I like giving back. When I think back to my time at Watertown, I have nothing but fond memories. Having gone to college and talked to a lot of people, not many people can say that.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part in contributing to somebody else saying that.
I think that was a part of your speech.
Was it?
I remember it sounded familiar. I don't know. I think you wrote that down before.
See, that's the thing. I've only got 5 things. I just put them in different orders.
Yeah. No, but dude, I want to praise the fact that you the way you handle things, and I'm glad that there's people almost like you appreciate the freaking military, and you know what I mean, that there's someone like you that will answer the calls when times are the worst. You know what I mean? Like that's a pretty wild thing, dude. That is super wild.
The comment that gets recycled or said a lot to me is I couldn't do your job. And I'm like, why? And they were like, just because it's sad, and I've never looked at it that way.
Right.
When somebody comes and sees me, the worst has already happened.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that there's been a death, but they've come to terms with that.
Mm-hmm.
When they're seeing us, it's 100% my job just to make things better. How can I help you get through this? I always think like nurses and doctors have it way worse because they have to deliver the news.
Right.
That somebody's not going to make it. When they see me, I don't even have to say why they're there. They know.
Yeah, yeah.
But this goes back to working where I work and my boss. Now I'm going to go on a tangent about the funeral industry. I just had continuing education because we were forced to take continuing education to keep our licenses. It turns out that in the next 10 years in the United States, over 2,500 funeral homes are going to close their door. 2,500. And we don't have a ton to begin with.
What?
85% of our workforce in the funeral industry is over the age of 55. And the most shocking is that this year in the United States, it's estimated that only 600 people will graduate from mortuary college. That's not in New York, that's in the United States. The crazier part of that is that 1/3 will not see their first year through. So 1/3 of 600 is already gone. So you've got 400 people entering the workforce in the United States of America this year to a field that has 85% of the employees over the age of 55.
Dude, that's scary as hell.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely concerning. I don't know what that means for the future of our field. Obviously what it means is funeral homes are going to close. The people who are funeral directors will receive more calls because there's less people to take those calls, less funeral homes to handle those calls. But when you're thinking about, okay, are we gonna is there gonna be time off? I don't know if there'll be time off. Because statistically we're coming into the generation of baby boomers right now.
Yeah.
Also. So nationwide, busier than ever with less funeral directors and less funeral homes.
I mean, you got to figure there's more people are going to pass away. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that ain't going away. So there's less people, more business is not, I mean, not business, but you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be more need.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's pretty freaking crazy, dude.
You think about, just the numbers. And we house, we have students come from SUNY Canton in the summer. They have to do a practicum for 6 or 8 weeks. I don't remember which one, but I've had, I think, 7 or 8 students come over. I've been with my funeral home, Reed and Benoit, for 18 years. Over that time, 7 students have shadowed us in the summer. There's only one person of those 7 that's even still involved in the funeral industry.
I talked to Tyler Clemens. He's got his own show with NBC too. Yeah. He's wanting to do a thing where he goes around and kind of talks about jobs that are available. Maybe I'm gonna hook him up with you. He'll do like a show, maybe kind of pitch it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that would be a great one, right?
Yep.
Well,
I used to do the job fair, the career jam.
Yeah.
And that's tomorrow. Every year that I went, there were all these businesses. I always had students backed up. In the first year, there's like 20 kids waiting at the booth at JCC. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at all this interest.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't. It was just to ask like the most disgusting questions they could think of, and then walk out as high schoolers do. And that happened that exact same way for 3 or 4 years. Yeah. And I finally was like, maybe I don't come anymore, because not one person from there went into the funeral industry.
Man.
But I do think that there's a way to pitch it. I really think that there's going to be a need in New York State to make a position, I don't know what you'd call it, but almost a funeral tech rather than a funeral director,
mm-hmm.
where a funeral tech could take a 6-month course or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And they could make removals from like places where people pass away.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now in the state of New York, if you're a funeral director, you're the only person that can make a removal from a hospital, mm-hmm. sign a body out from a hospital. You're the only person that can sign legal documents, so funeral itemization or like a pre-need contract if somebody's planning their funeral ahead of time. You're the only person that can embalm. So everything, like if you think of the medical field, all right, so we've got doctors, we've got PAs, we've got techs, we've got nurses, we've got all these things. But then if you take the funeral industry, everything associated with that can only be done by a funeral director.
Because it's like a lot of legal stuff, right? Like, dang. So that's the process. Is the body goes to the hospital? Is that
Let's just hypothetically say
Yeah.
right now that somebody passed away at the hospital. Family chooses a funeral home. Depending on where they go, either the family or the switchboard calls the funeral home, says you've had a death. They're in the morgue. All right, let's walk through the whole thing. Somebody passes away in a hospital. Next thing.
What if they didn't pass away in the hospital? How
So
does that work?
all right. There's two different ways.
Okay, go ahead.
There's either an unattended death, meaning that the person wasn't on hospice, and it also wasn't expected.
Right.
That would be a classic case of I haven't heard from my uncle in a couple days. I went over to his house. He was dead. At that point, the police and the ambulance have to come. They have to pronounce the person deceased, and the police have to make sure that there's no foul play. They then call the primary physician, and they say, such and such has passed. Is there a reason why they would have, given their medical history, passed away? If the answer is yes, then the funeral home goes. We get the body right from the house. If the answer from the doctor is no, I don't really think they should have passed away, then the medical examiner will come, whoever has the contract. There's a medical examiner contract in Watertown, and then they'll get the body and have it taken for an autopsy.
Okay.
So that's option one. I know I just threw a lot at you.
No, okay. I just wanted to make sure. I mean, I'm not really aware.
Option two is somebody's at home on hospice care. Hospice, when they pass away, family calls. Hospice comes and pronounces. Hospice already has a doctor lined up saying that the decedent was receiving at home end care medicine. So the doctor is going to sign. So then it automatically goes to the funeral home.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I got what you're saying.
Okay.
All right. And then you just take it from there.
So let's go back to the hospital. Pass away at the hospital, figure out who the funeral home is. If you pass away at a hospital, Eye and Tissue Bank, wherever you are, will call your family and ask if you'd like to leave a donation. So you wait for them to say either yes or no. Once they either say no, they're in our care, or if they say yes and they do a tissue harvest, the funeral home waits for that to be done. And then we'll pick the decedent up and we'll ask the family what they're thinking. Are you thinking of cremation? Are you going to have a casket out front with a viewing? Then we meet with them and go from there.
I mean, dude, you're the man. You're the man. But so, is there any cool things coming up with the school stuff? Now, I want to touch on that one more time because we are way into it. So, are you going to do a speech this year?
I have a lot of people who probably would be happy that I didn't.
Well, I thought you did a good job.
Well, I appreciate that. Graduation's in about a month. I just like with anything in life, I have to be inspired. A lot of the time, I think when you were there, I think that I touched on the book, The Places You'll Go.
Yes.
By Dr. Seuss.
Yes. Yeah.
And that I could tie that all in because my history teacher gave me a copy of that when I graduated, and then I got to pass it along to the graduates. I need to be inspired about, so I can't just get up there. I'm just not the type of person. I have to dive in.
Yeah.
I can't just dip my toe in, and I have to really fully believe in what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So to answer your question in the most roundabout manner, if between then and now I'm inspired and I find a reason that I think people would like to listen to me, then yes.
My I guess you say my middle daughter, She's in 9th grade this year, and you met her at the funeral thing. Talks a lot, dude. She is exactly like you and I were in school, dude. Just to talking. Like, everybody likes her.
Yep.
But gosh, she can get in trouble for talking.
She was asking me if I could get some extra snow days for her.
Yeah.
Yes,
She was.
I like her.
I told her I was going to talk to you tonight. She was like, "Look, you just cut the lights out, so switch it with me, and I'll ask him all kinds of stuff." I was like, "Oh my god!" But look, dude, we're gonna get this thing wrapped up. But I appreciate you coming in, and
I appreciate the honor of being here. I think you're going to be wildly successful in whatever you do because you're very likable, and it was a privilege to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate that, dude. But this is going to air probably about the time of graduation, so, you know, whatever. But
Cool.
But, dude, yeah, we'll get together and hang out sometime.
Absolutely.
All right, appreciate it.
Absolutely.